Welcome back. Movie number 46 is in the books, and this time it's David Lowery's Mother Mary. Stick around to find out if it delves into traditional horror, if it's more of a dark, dramatic look to the psyche of a pop star in her return to the stage. Welcome in. If you're new here, I've been reviewing every movie I see in the theater. I usually cover a non-spoiler overview and a little bit of my opinions and insights into the movie, and then I move into a spoiler section at the end. So if you don't want the movie to spoil, just watch the first half of this video or so, or I will let you know when the spoilers are coming up. Remember to like and subscribe if you've been enjoying any of these videos, or if this is your first time coming across my channel, always appreciated. Mother Mary is directed by David Lowery. He also wrote this one as well. Some of his previous works include The Green Knight, A Ghost Story, and Pete's Dragon. So quite the collection of films in his past. Plus he has a bunch of other ones he's also worked on. This movie stars Anne Hathaway as Mother Mary. She's been in Devil Wears Prada, The Idea of You, plenty of other stuff over the years. Everybody knows who Anne Hathaway is. And then you have Michaela Cole as Sam. And she was recently in The Christophers and also in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, along with The Last Jedi. And then we also have Hunter Schafer here as Hilda. She plays Michaela's assistant, as she is a designer. Hunter Schafer's been in Euphoria. She's been Kinds of Kindness. She was also in last year's horror movie. Maybe it was last year or the year before. Cuckoo, which was kind of interesting. The synopsis of this movie is basically a long buried wound rise to the surface when an iconic pop star, Mother Mary, reunites with her estranged best friend and former costume designer, Sam Anselm, on the eve of her comeback performance. So what is this movie about? Basically, Anne Hathaway plays Mother Mary, a pop star, very heavily influenced by Taylor Swift, and a mix of Lady Gaga. And I think Anne Hathaway looked at Beyonce for inspiration, at least in her interpretation of the character. But I know David Lowery mentioned he was heavily influenced by Taylor Swift's tour. There's a lot of influence around that in the artistic space. So essentially this movie, the primary story is that Mother Mary, she's going back to her original, I guess, designer stylist that she worked with for many years until she really took off as a star. And so there's this strange relationship between her and this ex-best friend, Sam. Mother Mary goes to her house and asks her to create a dress for her comeback show after being away from an accident that occurred. That's the gist of the story. There's a little bit that goes on there that kind of delves into some supernatural or kind of dark Gothic aspects. And the movie has a few different ways that you can interpret it. And I'll cover some of this stuff in the spoilers. You can see it in a few different ways. There's some allegories to what it's like to be an artist, about mending friendships, a bunch of stuff you can look into and really take away from this movie depending on where you're at in your life and what you've experienced. There is not really much violence. I wouldn't say it's not a traditional horror movie. I wouldn't even really call it a horror movie. I think it's more of like a dark drama, as these two characters are talking and kind of reconnecting and trying to understand, what happened in the past and what are they doing here, what are they doing now. So there is a little bit of violence, but not in a aggressive way. And there's a little bit of gore in it, especially in the latter half of the film. It's a pretty straightforward story. It's just about these two people trying to reconnect and understand where they're at now and what happened to them over time. The performances here were fantastic. Anne Hathaway does do her own singing. There is an album for this that released as well that has her singing on it, but it does have Charlie XCX and FKA Twigs, who also contributed to the music along with Jack Antonoff. Is that how you say his last name? So there is a lot of influences that you can hear in some of the songs in this movie that really sound kind of like that more dark poppy stuff in some of the more dramatic elements, especially from the Taylor Swift library of music, especially with Jack Antonoff being on there. But the darker side is probably coming from a little Charlie XCX and FKA Twigs. Anne Hathaway, she plays this character in a way that you can see that this person's dealing with something. They don't really know what it is themselves. They're trying to figure it out. They just look really exhausted. She does a great performance. There's some scenes in the movie where she's doing the singing stuff. She's doing kind of that performance art thing that a pop star would do. But there's also some other elements in the film, a couple of scenes that were really fantastic and building upon how she is as an artist in the character. I think this is really Michaela Cole's movie as Sam, who's playing the costume designer to this pop star. And she has a lot of monologues in this movie. So if you don't like movies with a lot of talking, you may not like this film. But I think the stuff she's saying, the way she presents it is really enthralling and really just dramatic. And I don't know if say over the top, but a lot of this movie felt like a stage play. And I think that was on purpose. There are some pretty cool kind of transitions they do between this kind of stage play feeling and then bringing in this pop star element where they do show some of the performances of Mother Mary as this, iconic pop star in the globe. So Michaela Cole, awesome in this movie, very strong performance. She just has this way of looking at the camera and just like looks like she's able to peek into your soul a little bit. And then there's Hunter Schafer. Her role is relatively minor in this. She's mostly in it in the beginning and the end of the movie as she plays Sam's assistant, Hilda. And what she has to work with is good. She's fine in the movie. She's not in it too much, so it's kind of hard to say much more than, yeah, she did an acceptable job. FKA Twigs has a small role in this as somebody who attends Mother Mary's birthday party as she's looking for some kind of insight. So FKA Twigs, I guess, kind of plays this spiritual type person who is doing a seance with them in part of the movie. I don't know if that's kind of a spoiler. I don't know. That's in the trailers, I think. I think that's in the trailers. I know there's some stuff with supernatural things in the trailers, but I thought FKA Twigs was pretty good for the small role she had. I remember seeing her in the Last Crow movie that came out a couple years ago. I thought she was terrible in that, but that movie was also not very good. I think where the strongest part of this movie is the visuals and sounds, the cinematography, the way the lighting worked. The locations of this movie really set the tone of what you're experiencing. Basically, what is a stage play, but in a theatrical form. So a lot of the movie takes place within Sam's barn or exterior house that she has. It's very creaky, it's very old, but this is where she does a lot of her design work. And so most of the movie is just Sam and Mother Mary in here working through the relationships, trying to understand how and what kind of dress that she's looking for this comeback performance. But the way they use some of the lighting, the way they do some of the sound design is very interesting. Is even though it's a movie about a pop artist, there's a lot of music, but there's also a lot of scenes where they don't really have any music, and a lot of it's exterior sounds coming from this old building. It sounds like there's some storms going outside, so there's a lot of natural sounds that they present in this film that I really enjoyed to create this distinct contrast between the very loud Gothic pop songs that they do in the film. And there's an interesting performance that goes on this, and I'll talk about that in the spoilers. But then like the camera work, it is very close-up shots. It kind of keeps you in discussion that these two characters are having throughout the film, and I think that bodes well for the type of film it is. It's very, very dark, very gothic. It's about these two people trying to overcome something and this connection they had in the past that broke for various reasons. Overall, it's just a really good use of the atmosphere in building upon that. And then there's some interesting concepts with some Super 8 footage. I don't know if they actually use Super 8. It looks like Super 8. There's these kind of flashback scenes they use that give that Super 8 vibe, similar to the Black Phone 2, which heavily had a lot of Super 8 stuff. So there's some scenes in here that kind of look like that. It provides this dreamy aspect to these flashbacks and things that are going on. I really enjoyed the music, but that's going to be depending on you and what kind of music you like. I'm really into a lot of different genres, but I do enjoy like dark synth pop, and this is pretty much right up my alley. I think the album overall that accompanies this movie is pretty good. There's a couple weak songs in it, but I'll link it in the description below in case you want to check that out. And then a lot of the songs in this reminded me of a local Seattle artist that I've played shows with in the past. I'll link their information below as well. If you like the music in this movie, you might like their music. So just a little shout out to this other band. And who should watch this movie? I think anybody who enjoys something where you can have multiple interpretations of what the overall theme of the movie is. This one, even though the directors, I believe, have come out and said this is kind of what it's about, that happens with a lot of movies. And you can always have your different interpretations. It's like art with anything. There's always the artist's intent, but also what do people actually see within the art that that person put out? Because they can have a completely different interpretation of song lyrics or a movie script or even the stage play, anything that's visual or auditory, that it's all open to interpretation. If you enjoy strong performances, this is definitely one of those movies that has this across the board, and then it also has amazing music to go along with the story. I really enjoyed this movie, so I'd give Mother Mary 4 stars. Okay, let's move into spoilers. So this movie can have a number of different interpretations based on these two friends trying to salvage their old relationship after Anne Hathaway's Mother Mary decided to find a different designer without really telling Sam in the past, and that's where their disconnect is. They just didn't really communicate very well. So there's a lot about, friendship. How do you build that connection again? There's some insights into artistry and creativity. What does it mean to reinvent yourself? What does it mean to be a solo versus a collaborative artist? And I think that's where some of the disconnect was between those two, is that Mother Mary wanted to try and exist without Sam as her costume designer, because Sam really kind of helped cement what Mother Mary's visuals look like to go with her performances, and so she didn't really feel like a true solo artist. So that's like one interpretation. You can also look at some of the stuff around pop star and the cost of stardom, where Mother Mary gave up this friendship in pursuit of becoming the world's biggest pop star. There's some stuff around there around pop culture and worship. I think that's kind of loosely in there. I don't think that's really what the movie is about. And then, lost friendships and reconnecting, and what is that like? And then forgiveness. A lot of this movie is about forgiveness and how they basically learn to understand each person's perspective and come to terms with that and are able to forgive each other. And that's where some of this ghost stuff comes into play. Whereas there's a scene with FKA Twigs, who is doing some kind of seance at Mother Mary's birthday and ends up actually cutting her hand open, and Mother Mary sees this kind of apparition and kind of gets freaked out a little bit for a few days. But prior to this, there's a scene where Sam is telling Mother Mary that she was at this performance in New York and she had this toothache. She ended up going back to her place and getting this tooth removed. They kind of show in a dramatic way where she pulls her tooth out with some pliers. She's kind of over exaggerating this, and she makes a joke about it. It's like, no, I'm kidding. I went to the dentist. But there's this whole section where this tooth, and there was some kind of ghost or spirit that came from her, and you see it in this form of a, I guess, silk red Shaw of some form. There's some other kind of visuals in there that you could probably interpret different ways. And so there's this theory that this ghost ended up later on, when Mother Mary has this seance, that the ghost traveled from London to Dublin, where the seance happened, and basically infected Mother Mary. And that's why she's been sad and under a lot of stress and not really knowing what she needs to do. And it's basically just kind of, I guess, allegory for the pain and regret that each of them had. And then this also leads into like one of the things and why her comeback is coming up is because there's a scene where she sees the ghost during one of her performances, where she's actually up in the air on circle platform, and she sees this spirit basically falls off the stage. She does have a harness, but it does look like she injures her back in some form, because they do have some scars on her spine throughout the movie, and they don't really dive too deep into that aspect of the injury. That comes into play later on with the gore. There's this one dance sequence where Sam asks Anne Hathaway to dance because she needs to understand what this last performance is like, but she doesn't want to hear any of Mother Mary's music. And so Mother Mary has to do this performance without any music. And This is where they use a lot of like stomping sounds, just a lot of wood and kind of that person moving through the room. I think it was a very effective scene in kind of breaking away from the overabundance of loud music that some of the other performances throughout the film have. And then there's a lot of stuff with the stage play component. There's one scene where you see Mother Mary after this seance happened, where you can kind of see her just keep going through the motions. It's kind of silhouetted, her going up and down the stage. And this, you can definitely see how this could work within a stage play and how they could present this. So, maybe one day they'll turn this into a stage play, because I think it would work very effectively with the right direction. And I thought that was super powerful. You can kind of slowly see her decay as a person and just not have the drive there where she just puts on a face when she gets on stage. But then as soon as she steps off stage, she's completely exhausted and just tries to walk away. And so there is a little bit of gore in it. There's the scene where Mother Mary gets her kind of palm cut open by the spiritualist person played by FKA Twigs. And then there's another scene, I guess the tooth scene could be kind of gory because she pulls out her tooth with her wrench. But that one's not too bad because you don't really see much. They do show some blood later on when she's sleeping and before she sees the spirit in her room. The scene at the end where they kind of have this seance because they're trying to get and drive this spirit out of Mother Mary. And the spirit could just, it could all be fake. It could just be all in their heads, and it's all just an allegory for the healing and pain that needs to occur between this friendship. In the seance section at the end, Mother Mary cuts open kind of the center of her chest, and there's like a scene where Sam puts her finger through it, and you see this, and that's probably like the goriest part of the film. Overall, the movie is I thought the movie is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say fun movie, but it was very intriguing and kept you wondering what were they trying to get to in this film. And I really love that aspect of trying to figure out what this could be about, but that interpretation can be for anybody to figure out. So let me know if you saw Mother Mary, what your opinions of the movie were. Did you love it? Did you hate it? This does seem like one of those films that people are going to love it or hate it. There might be some people in the middle, but I think it's going to be the other ends. And remember to hit that like and subscribe, and I will be back next time with more reviews.